Hey there, welcome to episode 131 of the Quaggling Sand audio program. I am your host, Dan Hugo. We are recording this late in the day, unusually late in the day, 4:49 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time here in Greater Vegas on Wednesday, May 13th, 2026. You can hear my voice is enjoying some of the effects of the season change. I don't know if they're calling this the allergy season, but I am. So bear with me. Hopefully it sounds okay on your end on this 13th of May, 2026. I think usually the allergy season is more in April, but to be honest, over the last couple of years, everything old is new and everything new is curious. But all that said, today's title and topic, The Fork. We're talking about decisions, life decisions, not current, but old. In fact, the main fork where a decision is made at some point, and I have one for me, there's usually somewhere in your past where you're like, if I had gone with door number 2, who knows? Who knows what could have happened? I think it's worthwhile to pursue evaluating where that fork may be, just for, just to know, or to consider at least. So that's the story. Quaggling sand, if you're not familiar, is a technical term I coined when I was very young. You may refer to this as pins and needles. I just recently heard some medical YouTuber describing it. I've been saying a loss of circulation. Technically, it's compression of the nerves wherever this is occurring. I think that implies that there's a reduction in circulation in general. So I think I've still been pretty close to accurate. I'm not a medical professional in any way. I just coined terminology. But anyway, as circulation returns, as the nerve begins to sense things, record and capture and transmit sensation inputs, you may feel pins and needles. But I always call it quaggling sand. For the purposes of this audio program, it is the swirling of memories in one's mind, in this case, mine, and the telling, the recounting, the recollection, the description. Maybe you'll find these stories interesting or informative or entertaining, something, hopefully. Hopefully that's why you're here. That's what I got for you. There won't be any guests for Quaggling Sand. I somehow received what I think is like an AI-generated marketing email. Whoever or whatever composed this email assured me that they have found episodes of Quaggling Sand to be fascinating, interesting, entertaining, all those good things. And then they wondered if they could connect me with a potential guest to talk about applications of AI. Sort of ironic, I think. But I forgot to respond. Yeah, no, unlikely to have any guests. This is mostly a vanity channel. The stories are my own. They are recalled to the best of my ability and told with as much or as little flourish as I think might be needed to make the point or to convey the message. Pretty much not just generating fiction, but I may emphasize or de-emphasize particular things depending on where we're trying to land with a particular story. This story, for example, I'm clearly not going to run down every single moment that comes from my fork in the road decision. So I've picked a couple of things. The list of things could change if I were to do this over, but it may appear like I'm overly focused on particular types of things, but it's mostly just things that I think are representative. It's not supposed to be comprehensive. So all that said, on today's episode of Quaggling Sand, hopefully wherever you found this audio program, you're able to locate the episode description, which contains the show notes, including a summary, which is slightly long today. I think it's two longer sentences, not too bad. And then the links, I don't have any episode links for today. I probably could have, but nah. So just the usual two, which we'll get to, and then I'll regale you with a tale. So the summary of today's episode: surely there are many options we come upon through our times to go the errant spacebar to got his way. No, to go this way or that, or maybe a third and more, maybe more options to select from. However, there is one big selection to the left or to the right that we could probably identify if we really thought about it. Boy, I typed through about it. This is nuts. How did I get here? If I really thought about it. And so I have. I don't know. See, I just started thinking about this yesterday. I don't know if I would have selected this had I not actually proactively kind of weighed some things out. I think if somebody had said, what was the big decision you made? I might have placed the fork in the road at college selection, or maybe when I dropped out of the ROTC program in college because I decided, I changed my mind. So, but I think this is actually a much more reasonable, more fundamental point that led to some of these other decisions. But we'll get to that, the reasoning and so on. The links for today's episode, the usual links, quagglingsand.com, QUOGGLINGSAND, quaggling sand, just like it sounds, .com. Now, I posted on a Buy Me an Update episode last week, so 10 days ago, that I was ready to publish some updates to my various website properties. And then immediately following that episode, had some issues with my knee and had some other stuff that sort of came up out of nowhere in my personal timeline. Nothing like life-threatening or life-altering, but certainly schedule-denying. And that set me back on the creativity side. So automation and creativity and design forthcoming. It's just one of those things. Even getting excited about reaching a milestone gets thwarted. So in any case, quagglingsand.com. Keep it handy. It will become useful at some point, more useful. The profile page linking everything is a buymeacoffee.com/DanHugo profile page. I use it as a link tree of sorts, free form. It has links to all of my audio programs and where to find them in various places. It has links to various projects on which I am working. It has affiliate links if you are so inclined. These are for things I actually use. Coffee beans, the nasal fresh, which I did use last night. No, I think it was more like super early this morning. I don't know if I've mentioned the nasal fresh here too much, and this is not really supposed to be a plug, but I really do use it, and it has made a huge difference in my ability to function, speak, breathe, sleep with how it works. So I won't get into the details too much. Some of their advertising is just awful. It's not quite that graphic, but it is a useful thing. So I'd like to think that I'm able to speak a little bit better today because I did use it at probably 2 a.m. Nose completely blocked up. Yeah, I won't go into this too much, but it does work. And so there's an affiliate link for that through Amazon. There's the coffee beans and so on. So, or you could buy me a coffee, but you are not required to. So no need to spend any money, but if you do want to, by all means. I think most of the affiliate links are Amazon links, and I think I do have the cash card or whatever from Jack Dorsey. We can all have mixed feelings about how he functions, but as far as a utility debit card, I use it all the time. So for what that's worth. But yeah, all this is free. I don't really ask for money, but some people want to tip jar. So there you go. I've had the Buy Me a Coffee page for 5 years. Same with Ko-fi.com, ko-fi.com/DanHugo. And each of them has a correspondingly named audio program to go with them. Okay, enough about that. Let's get to the story. Many forks. And by the way, I am, for better or worse, we'll see if it has any impact, I am drinking some Major Dickerson from Pete's. Major Dickerson beans, coffee beans, ground right here at home, and then drip coffee style. I got to do a pour over with this. It's a good, reasonable, it's not really intended for espresso, or it's good in the AeroPress. But as a drip coffee for a nice dark roast, I like it. So here we are. Obviously, we all make decisions through our time on this planet. Some are easy or easier. Others require some thought. Sometimes there are resource constraints, familial considerations, any number of factors and possibilities. Yeah, true. True. I think it's hard to argue with that. There are too many to really ponder effectively choices that we make. Sort of like the multiverse theory or the many worlds interpretation of quantum existence. Exponential growth of scenarios and potential outcomes is just beyond casual examination. So who knows how the fork that I'm identifying today impacts what's happening now, which is, what would that be, 36, 37 years later? But, probably some small amount here and there. I have mentioned a couple of the milestones around which decisions have been made within the random bits episodes of this audio program and a few other more focused episodes, again, of this audio program. And it comes up sometimes in the Cafe Genius Impresarios audio program as well with some of my startup ideas. But here I'm going to draw, who wrote this? But here I'm going to draw, and by the way, I write everything, no AI, I don't even hand it over to some chat doodad to tweak anything. This is 100%. All the errors are mine and all of the other interesting parts are also mine. So there. But here I'm going to draw a line in the proverbial sand and suggest that this one decision was the bigger game changer over a long term than any others I could identify. And certainly there have been other game changers since, but what I was looking for was basically that, in a tree, when the tree is growing and then it kind of branches off, if it does, and there may be, we had a tree like this in front of the house in New Milford. It was, it had the main trunk and then it branched off into two smaller trunks. And so I kind of think of it that way. Like along the way, there will be one big thing that, you're going to go left or right. And then from there, there's a bunch of other little branches and so on. I was thinking about working backwards to arrive at what I think is the fork that mattered. Maybe the most, probably the most, certainly in situ. It was an important decision. I didn't know it at the time, but I think this is not so easy to describe in this format, audio, and I'm not really here to build suspense or anything. So I'm not going to wander backwards until we go, well, okay, we're here now. If there were a network illustration, perhaps if we were doing a video, it might make sense to look at outcomes and move backward through the decisions to arrive at some critical path change, maybe. But we can do that here with my starting out in the fork. And I think it'll be the fork that I think is the one that mattered. Then I will convince you and me both that this is probably the one. So the fork. The fork that I think mattered most was when I decided to continue on from Royal Palm Junior High School to Sunny Slope High School, some 5 miles away from home. I think Royal Palm was about half that far. I could check. I checked on Google Maps for high school. I think the junior high was probably halfway between my parents' home, where I was living at the time, of course, and where these schools were located. Rather than going to Apollo High School, about 1 mile away, and in fact, almost exactly 1 mile away, 1 mile south, straight shot. I've described before walking to the elementary school that I attended for 6 years, over 5 years, and the straight shot. And then if I just continued, instead of turning right to cross the street to go to the elementary school, just continue for another half mile, would have been an Apollo. And in fact, I did that a couple of times when I was younger and older, but not to go to the school. I know the selection between two public high schools doesn't seem so earth-shattering, but the reason this is worth examining, to me anyway, is that it probably is the small decisions early on that have made, or that might have such impact, or might have made such impact. And it is entirely possible that other small decisions of this magnitude have had, or could have, similarly large impact if we really think about these things. So you may have something that at the time seemed inconsequential, and then later you're like, oh, you know what? It was that. I turned left instead of right, and that was it. A little bit of background for those who have not heard all of the previous episodes that are relevant. We moved from New Milford, New Jersey when I was about 6 years old. I can't remember the month we commenced the move. There was a cross-country drive and so on. But we moved to Glendale, Arizona eventually. There was a brief stop in Phoenix for a little bit of time there while the house we would live in was being built. It was good times. I would attend Horizon Elementary School. It was Unit 10 when I first signed up, and then they named it Horizon. It was the newest school in the Glendale Elementary School District at the time, almost exactly halfway between this new home and the Apollo High School, as I described. I attended that school from the final month of first grade, so it was like sometime in May, through the end of sixth grade. I think I've described that before. My third grade team teacher, Debbie Reeker, was my sixth grade homeroom teacher. She was definitely someone who had an impact on my educational trajectory. And I think I described that I had found out at some point that she passed away from leukemia. I think it was too young. But there it is. So I was at Horizon Elementary School through the end of sixth grade. And it was becoming clear that the Glendale Elementary School District was not so challenging for me. Anyway, not a brag, just, we're leaving some potential on the table, perhaps. Switching to the Washington Elementary School District was the way that we went, and I would attend Royal Palm Junior High School for the 7th and 8th grades. To be honest, I don't remember how we arrived at that school as a decision, or I remember how we got there. My mom would drive me in the morning and then pick me up in the evening because we were reasonably close to her workplace at the time. That may have been a factor. There were some substantial outcomes as a result, including advancement through a math timeline more quickly. I was bored at Horizon when it came to these things. Movement into more advanced classes, and most of this was by way of some generally better teachers. The principal of the school, Jim Ritchie, took some initiative, I guess, and had me go through some sort of a aptitude test, and they determined that I was the initial classes that I had signed or that I was placed in, I guess, when I first joined school. I had no record with that school district because I switched. So they placed me in the basic classes, and I remember the bottom line was they said, yeah, you should be in some more advanced classes. So that was good. It was good that they took the initiative. I really didn't find that, other than from Miss Reeker, Debbie Reeker, didn't find that to be so common the case at Horizon. Not to be mean, but Zeke Ashley and Robert Foster, math and biology respectively, were game changers, as was Catherine Wolfe with 2 Fs in what I believe they called a reading seminar, but it's basically a literature class, which also, being in that class, Mrs. Wolfe was responsible for publishing with her students the school newspaper. So that also brought me into the exciting world of school newspaper publishing. I don't recall precisely how I landed at Royal Palm in particular. Maybe it was the ease of transport since I needed a ride to get there and to get home. I could have taken the city bus, as it turns out. Looking back, I think that would not have been unreasonable, and I would do that for high school. But it was time, once the 2 years came to an end, to make this big decision. Whether to continue with these new classmates to the school most of them were going to attend, Sunny Slope, or switching back to the school within walking distance and almost certainly rejoining my old elementary school friends and colleagues who would also likely attend there. As I mentioned, I went with Sunny Slope over Apollo. So I went with the 5-mile commute over the 1-mile walking commute. That was the first big consequential personal decision when I really think about it. I suppose I may have had some input on the selection of Royal Palm. Certainly in the notion that Horizon was not doing it for me. I think I probably expressed that myself a few times. But this decision was the first real material selection I made for my own specific reasons along my educational trajectory that would lead eventually to my career path and so on. Again, at the time, this did not seem so consequential. Only in retrospect was this a uniquely significant fork in the road, and I will attempt to describe how I reached this conclusion through this episode. So contemporaneously, my consideration was the time and effort spent becoming acquainted with the new classmates at Royal Palm, most of whom had known each other through their K-6 elementary school experience. I was the outsider joining in late, so I was not fond of the notion of restarting at Apollo with my former classmates after basically moving away from them. Though, to be fair, not much attempt to keep in touch from that side either. So I did try to stay in touch with a couple of my closer friends, Brian and Matthew, for example. That those just sort of slipped away, and that's how it works. Two to tango and all that. Momentum was the main driver. Where am I? Which was more important than the 5-mile commute to me, which would be addressed with a direct city bus route for a couple of years. It turns out there's a bus route that was 100 yards from the house. Go wait at the bus, catch the bus, direct shot, even though it looped through Metro Center's transit terminal thingy, commuter terminal, I guess. The transit center probably. It looped through Metro, but it was essentially a straight shot down Dunlap Avenue from basically the front door to the high school campus, directly in front of the school. Dropped me right off, no problem. So in fact, over time, the bus driver, because I was often the only one on the bus by the time we got to the school, he would just drop me where I wanted to. I mean, the campus was large, so he would just usually drop me at the end where the ROTC classrooms were, because that's usually where I would hang out. So that was nice of him. It pays to know people, I suppose, in some small ways. Where am I? Yeah. So nobody tried to keep in touch with me, and I kind of faded away for them. So the other thing, and useful for obtaining a variance to attend the school farther away, so you had to do a little bit of paperwork to accomplish this, was the availability of an AFJ ROTC program at Sunny Slope, while Apollo had a Navy NJ ROTC program. Anyone who knew me in the early years knew of my fondness for aircraft and flying, and my interest in eventually joining the U.S. Air Force to fly. So we used to go to air shows and all this, and I had airplane pictures all over the place. So I knew the fundamentals of flying an airplane and so on. So getting a variance based on the AFJ ROTC availability at Sunny Slope was convenient, but also highly relevant to what I thought might be a part of my actual future. So that worked out nicely as well. So initially the decision seemed pretty simple, pretty straightforward. That's in some ways, public high school is a public high school, right? Sort of. So the early and obvious things, those first days in high school can be a little unusual, I'm sure. We are back to being the youngest people on campus, right? Graduate from the big 8th grade. If you're from back east, maybe your junior high school is grades 7, 8, 9. So you'd enter high school for 3 years as a sophomore. Depends. But here we had the 2 years of junior high school and then 4 years of high school. So it was good to migrate over smoothly without all the overhead of re-answering the whatever happened to you type questions, among others. And I have to be honest, I was able to advance into high school geometry for math while at Royal Palm, taking the class at Washington High School, yet another educational resource in the Glendale Union High School District, which would not have happened had I remained at Horizon. I mean, that's pretty clear, the trajectory I was on there, as were my classmates. So the transition into the next 4 years was smooth. It carried my progress while at Royal Palm into Sunny Slope reputationally, academically, just momentum in general, as far as classwork and accomplishments and so on. And as an added bonus, the commute distance was actually a good thing, which I would become more aware of sooner and then much later, years later, in fact. Sunny Slope was known for its athletics program and its swim teams in particular. Our PE coach, Brian Matheny, a highly regarded and awarded. He'd received several accolades over the years. He was a nice guy. Pardon me. Our PE coach for the first year, PE class requirement was also the swim coach. And as it happens, he lived about 2 blocks away from me in my parents' home. He was a bit of a character, well respected, and he loved the AFJ ROTC program. So he didn't really try to cause anybody trouble, getting their uniforms wet or anything. So he was a bit cool in that regard. He would cut a small amount of slack on uniform days for that kind of thing. If we had to change for swimming, had to get out of the pool early and try to dry off so we could get back in. I mean, hey, we were wandering on campus sometimes in a coat and tie for a Class A uniform day, or a long sleeve shirt and a tie or whatever. So he appreciated that and So that was good. The swim team would traditionally wear a long sleeve Oxford and a tie for, I think it was before they had swim competitions or something. So I think he was okay with that. It was part of the class at the beginning and end of the year, by the way. So we had swim class in Phoenix when it was super hot out. So I guess that was okay. I also cleaned his pool now and then since I did live 2 blocks away from him. That was rare for Sunnyvale. I'm sorry, for Sunnyvale, for Sunny Slope students to live so close to him since I was out of that district. The existence of the AFJ ROTC program was interesting in general. I would participate throughout my 4 years there. I became the squadron commander and all sorts of other nice things. I would participate in competitive programs, after-school programs, and so on. Got a ride in a T-34, including some aerobatics, twice, thanks to my participation in that program. The program was, and I also stayed at Luke Air Force Base and the Marine Corps Recruit Depot in San Diego. So I was kind of getting myself out there, getting around. The program was held in high regard on campus. So this was a little bonus that there was a sort of an inner circle within the ROTC program. And then there was a sort of connection between that end of the campus and some of the other stuff going on campus, some of the other people running different programs and so on. So it was beneficial to me during my time at Sunny Slope High School. There were a variety of programs, a few teachers who were more proactive, and in general, a sense that Sunny Slope did have some nice features for a public high school, which I was able to take advantage of, in part because of just being a proactive member of the student body, participation in particular programs, and so on. So that was nice. I should add here, there was a third option that I actually did not really consider too seriously. It was Brophy College Prep, B-R-O-P-H-Y, Brophy College Prep, which was a private Jesuit high school on Central Avenue, I think it was, not too far from Sunny Slope. I was not thrilled with the non-secular elements there, so 2 public options were the only real considerations. But so I could have gone to a private, more expensive school. Not clear to me that I would have benefited in too many ways. The rapid redux, here are some things, I'll just run through them. So some specifics, and these were just during my time at Sunny Slope. So these are the early apparent benefits or things that took place because I made this selection. We can touch on some later outcomes next, which we will. Let me seed this with the following. One of my classmates from Royal Palm, Adam, that's his real name, Adam, last name unknown, and a guy I met waiting for the bus, John, were both also in AFJ ROTC. We didn't arrange that ahead of time. That's the case. And we would all become standouts of sorts in that first year of the class. We just sort of took to it, and it took to us, and we became pretty well known. I mean, AFJ ROTC was sometimes a class taken by people because they just needed an elective and they didn't even know what they were getting themselves into and so on. The 3 of us had a particular trajectory in mind, and in fact, both John and Adam would eventually enlist in the military. We ended up getting to know each other pretty quickly in that context. I knew a lot of people, but these 2 in particular. So John and Adam and I would participate in those extracurricular ROTC activities, so we were around the campus more often pursuing these. So we just were around. John and I would usually be on the same bus coming to school and going home, more often going home, which happened to pass through the Metro Center Mall, transit center, so in the parking lot, not in the mall. But, we'd basically pass through the mall circle. The Metro Center Mall was at the time a very substantial mall, very well known and so on. So the mini transit center was right there, a piece of cake. And he would leave the bus, and I think he would walk home, or maybe there was another bus that would take him close to where he lived. So he lived reasonably close to the mall, but sort of north, and I lived west. So we would part ways. Sometimes I would see him in the morning. I would usually be on an earlier bus than he would ponder. So I passed through Metro Center. He would get off, and I would continue on home. Later, John would end up getting a job at the McDonald's inside the mall, probably because it was proximal to where he was living. It's convenient. Adam and I would join in soon after, and for me, it was somewhat convenient since I could catch the bus to work from school and so on. A 1970 VW Bug would enter the picture later. But initially, I had to get to work and get to school and everything, making use of our public transit at the time. So that was good and educational. While working at McDonald's, I encountered peers my own age, both visiting the mall as customers, but also working at the McDonald's from various other high schools, including one person from Apollo whom I had not known previously. Surely there were people at Apollo had never met, so that's fine. I don't know what I would have. No, I don't know that I would have worked at a McDonald's in the mall if I was at Apollo, given the vastly different commute. So I would not have been passing through Metro Center so frequently. I would not have encountered people whom I knew more. I was more familiar with John and Adam, so when the possibility of working together at the mall in the McDonald's arose, that was sort of a, oh yeah, sure. So I don't know that any of those things would have taken place if I had attended Apollo. Apollo's in south, not east. I'm sorry. Apollo is south of the parents' home. Metro Center is east, so they're literally orthogonal commute paths. Aside from meeting a lot of, and by the way, there's nothing between the parents' home and Apollo, whereas Metro Center Mall was between parents' home and Sunny Slope. So just logistically, it was it was apparent here. Oh, look, I can work here too. Well, aside from meeting, it sounds complicated. It's not. Aside from meeting a lot of people from other schools, I, of course, got that high school job experience in fast food, which would be a part of my desire to not be in this line of work forever. However, I did observe the difference between an episodic job and a job with ongoing pursuits. An observation I made at the time was that once you are done with your day, your shift, nothing you did that day really carries over into the next day. That's not completely strictly true, but practically that is the case. So no one is going to come in the next time you're working and say, how's my hamburger coming along? Like, oh, the one you ordered 3 days ago, you didn't get that yet? That just doesn't happen, right? So your days are completely episodic. Very rarely did they carry over into the next day. Maybe if you took part in like moving inventory into the walk-in freezer or whatever, then, hey, where did you put the boxes? Oh, okay. Yeah. So things like that. But 99% episodic, right? Standalone shifts, no impact between them. So that was a good experience to know very practically the difference between that and, oh, I got to work on something for 6 months, which is where my career tends to be more so. The math and science teachers, and this is sort of changing away from fast food now, the math and science teachers in classes at Sunny Slope were good. They were actually pretty good. The biology teacher had issues. There was some shoplifting allegations at a local store. He was a character. But Mr. Trudeau was excellent, like truly excellent in chemistry and physics, and Garrity for calculus, and later, early on, a meeting with my guidance counselor. So early. So it wasn't like my senior year, but it was not, I don't think it was it might have been during my freshman year, later in the year. But it was so earlier in my time at the school, but later in the year. I think that's what I'm trying to say there. My guidance counselor, Alan Osborne, and my mom came by, so the three of us were sitting in his office. He suggested I might consider schools. Dan has a proclivity for math and science. Maybe he could think about schools like MIT or Caltech or maybe Harvey Mudd College. What was that last one? I remember thinking. I believe I would have pointed out, shouldn't I just go to ASU or something? I really hadn't put much thought into college just yet. I probably would have been pointed more towards ASU, in fact, by people at Apollo had I attended Apollo. But that's a total guess. But I have one thing to back that up with, which I'll get to in a moment. I was taking a city bus to get to school every morning, back home in the evening, which would factor in over the years when it came to getting around in other places, near and far. And to this day, I would rather use public transit than deal with car payments, car insurance, car burglaries, and theft, parking, collisions, and the whole deal, especially here in Vegas. Cars can be rented as needed, though I was eager to have a car and learn this firsthand during my time in high school, of course. I would not have a car through college, and in most of my world travels for Intel Corporation, I chose to take public transit rather than renting a car because I was often I would take a taxi or more often like a Lyft or an Uber. Most of the time I would be at an event like a hackathon and I would be just staying awake for 2 days. So I didn't really feel the need to rent a car to have it sit in the parking lot. But when I was in Ireland, for example, for 5 weeks, I took the bus everywhere or the train from Maynooth to Connolly Station, if you're wondering, and back. But heavy use of I think it was the 66 bus was my favorite. I even took the X buses. Yeah, true story. I had a Leap card. So yeah, I've actually come to rather enjoy not having to deal with a car. So I did own a car. I used to go on road trips to, various places in California. I would drive back to Phoenix from the Bay Area. When I did have a car and I first started working for Intel, I drove to San Diego for a team meeting where the team was in San Diego and Silicon Valley. But generally speaking, I have migrated my mindset away from car ownership. And I really think that public transportation, public transit, trains, buses, occasionally a ride share. I think these are, unless you really need to have a car at your disposal, I think these just make a lot more sense. So that sort of took root when I was commuting to and from high school because it was farther away. There are probably a few other items, mostly related to the fact that I was farther away from the home most days. So I could very easily walk back to my parents' home for lunch if I really wanted to from Apollo. But being 5 miles away without a car, there was a little bit more planning. I had friends with cars. We could walk to a convenience store, or we could have school lunch, or we could walk to fast food restaurants that were nearby. So we did all those things, but I wasn't really tethered to home. It was just out of a convenient radius. So that was probably a factor in some of the things, like my daily social activities and so on. My friend group was fun. So I was exposed to more people, more places, more conversations, and so on. My friend group was fond of midnight movies in the summer, movies and wandering around the mall in general, especially the one that I worked in, where I would wonder if reconnecting with some of the friends I had in elementary school and spending my 4 years at Apollo walking distance from home and with a completely different collection of businesses at which I may have explored jobs, would there have been, I think there would have been a significant and material difference evident. And I was mostly happy with the Sunnyvale experience, Sunny Slope experience. I would move to Sunnyvale eventually, and that I don't think that was related, but you never know. Sunnyvale was the city mentioned in the movie War Games with Matthew Broderick. That had no role in making my decision, but it was something I noted later. Apollo High School had a couple of businesses nearby if I was going to have an after-school job that I would walk to, for example. But it was just a completely different set of surroundings. So Sunny Slope played a role in a few different ways. Making that decision had those various types of impacts, some of which I'm sure I don't really notice or recall, but it was a material difference, to be sure. Then there were some later impacts. I have pointed this out before in a recent episode, I think, that there were many people refer to high school as the best days of our lives or whatever. Those people probably didn't consider continuing education and experiences engaging with others with more direction and interests and whatnot. You're pretty much compelled to go to high school in the United States, but everything after that is you're kind of on your own. So you're going to encounter people with different, maybe greater and more interesting motivations and directions and so on. So high school was formative, but certainly not the best to be. I might even wonder if there is something to attending a high school that is not attended by most of the people you have known since first grade, which I think is probably common. With my school change, I had only 2 years knowing my high school classmates initially, not 6 or 7. And again, there were people who knew each other maybe since before they started going to school. They all kind of lived in the same general area in the district, right? So they went to Washington Elementary School from kindergarten to 6th grade. Then they went to Royal Palm. 7th and 8th, and they're in high school together. There are some of those people whom I believe went on to University of Arizona or ASU, and they probably still get together today, and they're probably like, the prototypical characters from what is it? The movies from the 80s where the high school friends, whatever. It, I think. No, but so yeah, the point is that I think there's some value in not hanging out with the same people for decades. Not that you can't hang out with them, but I think growing up and spending so much time and through a learning process and so on. And I could see this when I was at Sunny Slope, the people that had known each other forever, like their interactions were so much more familiar that I think it's almost lazy, if that makes sense. So I only knew people for 2 years. They didn't know they didn't know anything about me. I didn't know anything about them. So after 2 years in junior high school, we're off to high school. And I think that was actually significant. Some of the high points that would come later. So I ended up going to Harvey Mudd College. Thank you, Alan Osborne, for the suggestion. There was one other student there whom I had met at Sunny Slope while he was attending 2 years ahead of me at Sunny Slope High School, Scott. So I had a kindred spirit of sorts, while there were 0 students from Apollo High School attending Harvey Mudd for my entire time there. And the school did make an effort to connect people if they were from the same geographical region. So I would have encountered other students from Apollo explicitly because of this matchmaking sort of network effort that the school would engage in. Plus, if you were from, hey, before people come to school, do you want to have a little meetup? So they would try to facilitate a familiarization process for incoming first year students and so on. So I'm fairly certain I would have encountered any Apollo High School students, and I did not. And this may have influenced the suggestion from my guidance counselor, Alan Osborne, during our meetings, since Scott, 2 years ahead of me, was also attending Harvey Mudd College. So maybe. I don't think that would have happened from Apollo. Like I said, I think I would have been pointed at ASU, especially because ASU has a substantial engineering college. So that I'm just guessing, but I think that may have happened. And then, of course, I probably would have stayed closer to the Phoenix area for work. So I may have worked at Motorola, Honeywell. I think Intel was there at that time. But Motorola, yeah. So the early days of semiconductor, the key industries of the Phoenix metropolitan area, aside from tourism, were semiconductors, electronics assembly, government contracting, and one more. I don't remember the fourth one. It'll come to me. I did not end up pursuing an appointment to the United States Air Force Academy, which was on the agenda when I was first selected to be a part of the AFJ ROTC program. I did have a meeting with John McCain's appointment committee, during his first term as a senator in Arizona. He wanted to consider an Annapolis appointment, but I was not so thrilled with heading back east, where Annapolis is, having visited the campus at Colorado Springs. I was really more fun, even though it snows in Colorado Springs. I thought being on the west side of the country was more along my interests. So I did have an AF ROTC full ride scholarship, type 1, at Harvey Mudd College, thanks to my time in the AFJ ROTC program at Sunny Slope High School. So that would not have happened at Apollo, to be sure. I don't think I would have been in the Navy JROTC program at Apollo. So, however, given that I knew what I knew from my time through the high school program, and that I would not have the eyesight to pass the Air Force pilot's physical examination to become a pilot at some point, the quote from the person who gave me my eye exam for my application to the United States Air Force Academy was, "I'm going to write down 2020, and this is the last time anyone will write 2020 on any forms from the government for your eye exam." So it was clear that I would not be I would not have the vision qualifications to be a United States Air Force pilot. Maybe in the Military Airlift Command, flying C-5s or something. That's not really what I wanted to do. So again, given that I knew what I knew and that I would not have the eyesight to pass, I decided to lean back into a computer future on the ground rather than up in the air. I think I was better informed for my time in the high school version of the ROTC program. And here again, that's probably one of those fork decisions that was, but that would come much later after a whole slew of other decisions. So that's an example of like, of course, we're going to encounter many forks, many two or more options to select from that will have impact into the future. And this one certainly did as well. I had a variety of jobs while in high school. This may have made it easier for me to be inclined to integrate work-study jobs into my college schedule. Harvey Mudd was known for being somewhat grueling. I took 15 to 18 units every semester. I think that's unusual for other schools, but there it's pretty common. So being able to work in some jobs at the library, some tutoring jobs, and so I had a variety of ways to make a couple of dollars to pay for books and pizza and whatnot. So good times. So again, that probably comes from having that job, well, at least one job, McDonald's, where it started. And that again came as a result of selecting Sunny Slope High School. So now you can see how the trickle down effect, or trickle over, perhaps. I do believe that the restart of friendship formation and acclimation to new situations from a school change were applicable to this transition into college, especially since the school was smaller in student body size than my high school was. So here again, you're starting out in high school with a bunch of people you don't know. Unlike my classmates at Sunny Slope High School, who knew their classmates for 5, 6, 7 years, 8 years, I only knew them for 2. And then when you go off to college, a small college, had I gone to ASU, I probably would have known, 200 people, 300, 5, well, who knows? But I went off to Harvey Mudd College. It was a surprise at the time. Did I know ahead of time? I may have known somehow in some brief crossing of paths that Scott would be attending Harvey Mudd. But for the most part, I arrived at Harvey Mudd not knowing anyone. And it was only later that hey, yeah, you went to Sunny Slope also. Okay, yeah, I heard about you, or whatever the case was. So basically restarting again. So when you go to a small school, you're not going to have, oh yeah, we all knew each other since we were in kindergarten. That just doesn't happen. So having that already available in my mental Rolodex of skills, I guess, was probably useful. So yeah, you basically have to start over. This was when the internet was just becoming something that people would use casually for sending emails. So there were some high school affiliates that had email addresses, but those dropped off very quickly. So for the most part, I barely kept in touch with anybody from high school. And I've talked about this before. I think that just becomes one of those things. There are people who stay in touch forever, and there are people who, I haven't known you for 30 years. I knew you 30 years ago. So I have a cynical take, perhaps. As a bit of a follow-on, I got to know a lot of people older and younger than me in high school. This was also true in college. So mostly because I had moved ahead in math and some science stuff, and I met a bunch of new people when I arrived at high school. But I only knew those 2 years worth of my classmates. So I was essentially kind of floating around, meeting people. The AFJ ROTC program, if you're also in band, or the theater, or there were some, or probably the athletics programs as well. You're going to be interacting with people older and younger, so that was facilitated. I don't think I would have been in the Naval JROTC program at Apollo High School, so I actually would have probably reconnected with the friend group that I had before, rather than kind of breaking into a completely new situation. Just guesses, speculation. This may be a repeat of my previous point about restarting the friendships and so on, but I think it is a non-trivial factor in life in general to function in unfamiliar situations with new people. So taking a new job, moving to a new city, just in general. So I kind of got those going a few times, and I've talked about this, moving from New Jersey to Phoenix, moving between the schools, going off to college, changing jobs so frequently in Silicon Valley to avoid being laid off in the chaotic times of the dot-com era. being able to do some networking. I mean, all these things are skills you develop over time, but I think that fork was an interesting and educational moment for me in general along those lines. Through my career, I've found some benefit being able to switch to new settings and to meet new people and so on. This did not come from my selection of high school to attend or which one to attend, but planting those seeds early is not a bad idea. So I think in general, having that flexibility to not be so tight. Well, but I have to leave my coworkers. I'm going to leave all my friends, and you'll see. So I will suggest that there was a bit of help there into the future when I made that first decision. You'll see this a lot. People will think of work as a work family. They lament I was at this company for so long, and I think, I don't know if a direct line can be drawn, but I really think I sort of became a little bit more, or less sensitized, I suppose, to these long-term interpersonal commitments to people or commitments to workplace, right? I moved to different places every 4 years, 2 years, whatever. So at some point you're like, well, I can stay in touch with people. I don't have to be sitting in their lap at work, but I can still maintain connections with people, which has only become easier with more electronic communications and global connectivity and so on, which is a whole topic for another time. I've talked about this before also. The fact that people do not stay in touch when it has only gotten easier is probably noteworthy. But I got this out of my system early on. The vestigial element of that was my tendency to reach out first. That is something that has faded over time. So, yeah, cynicism for the win. Now, it would be possible to go 3 or 4 hops farther from my decision fork, so maybe even more. How many, 30 some years, 36, 7, what did I say? That's 35 plus years later, the lasting influence of that selection is probably somewhere in there. Some are a bit of a stretch, probably. But the premise is still that a small move in one direction versus another can have amplified effects down the road, and I believe that is the case here. So, I could, if we did the backwards exercise where I worked from a current or an older situation somewhere in my career path, or why did I move from here to there and so on? Oh, it was because I knew someone who I knew from this other thing that I met from some high school connection, whatever it was, right? So I think it would be illustrative to do the backwards walk another time. So wrapping it up, we're coming to the end of this section. I'm sorry, the final section of this episode. We're approaching 1 hour, so I didn't know this would go on so long. Sorry. Today, I am happy to not own a car. I take the bus here and there around Vegas. I am happy to take a bus to Phoenix again one of these days. It's the Flix bus. It's a European company. I've done the round trip several times. Going right now is about $35 each way, so it's not bad. I've done my share of flying while I was with Intel, and in general, I still like flying, but there's something to be said for jumping on a bus, not having to worry about traffic, staying awake, right? You can nod off, take a nap. And the trip is long enough where you can actually do that. And I'm very rarely in a big rush. That's something I learned from my travels in aircraft for Intel, was that being in a rush, there's really no value in it. But plan your flight for the day before and, take a layover so you can grab a snack or stretch your legs. There's really no reason to rush, in my mind. I mean, there are sometimes, but in general. So a relaxed attitude about travel. The same goes for commuting here locally in Vegas. I don't really stress too much about not having a car. Oh, it's going to take me an hour to get to some place, but I'm also not spending money on a car that will be broken into. So a certain amount of practicality emerged from my decision, I think, from being a commuter. And by the way, if we had stayed on the East Coast and I was still living in the New Jersey area, I could have been taking Port Authority buses and subways in the city and so on. This is not a new or amazing thing, but in a place like Phoenix with its grid system, which was useful, the bus system was actually fairly reasonable. So it was a good experience, a good learning experience. And because of my selection, I was taking the bus every day. I do enjoy meeting people, even though I don't always like dealing with people. possibly because so many of my young schoolmates did not keep in touch when I moved to the junior high school far away. I, for many years, would proactively engage people I had met. So this was after when I, entered the career timeline, right after my graduation from college. I would connect with people, meet with people. Of course, the advent of Facebook and other platforms, and of course, LinkedIn. Neither of these platforms are appealing in the modern era to me, but I still use LinkedIn for better or worse. These made it easier to stay in touch with people, and something I was proactively interested in driving until recent years. Over recent years, I've become sort of convinced that staying in touch with people is something that should only require a small amount of effort. And if people choose to be unresponsive, then that is where the effort ends. So I very rarely pursue like, hey, I haven't heard from you in a while, that kind of stuff. Meh, the cynical outcome. So generally speaking, at any given point in time and space, we should be able to ask ourselves things like, how did I arrive at this place at this time? How did I get here? Why did I get here? And maybe, why do I know these people? How did I come across this collection of ne'er-do-wells and other such deeper meanings, right? There's all kinds of, start with why, as Simon Sinek might, but in a personal sense. This is not something to be awestruck over, though perhaps the journey to reach the point in question may be awesome. I'm here right now. I'm not going to be questioning the universe, but it is interesting to see what the cause and effect and so on might have how a role was played in some earlier decisions. How did I get here? How did I can we show our work to get to the answer? Now, I relocated to Vegas because of a house fire in Sunnyvale, in 2013, April of 2013. It was happenstance that a colleague from Palm in Sunnyvale, where I worked before, was visiting CES, the Consumer Electronics Show, in Vegas shortly after I relocated to Vegas. So I knew him from years ago. I think I worked at Palm in 2008. Here we are in 2014. He hey, what are you doing? You want to go grab some lunch while I'm in town for the show? I went to the show also. He was looking for someone to travel on behalf of the Intel Maker Innovator Group that he was a part of. So they hired me. Why did this lead me to the set of the America's Greatest Makers reality show eventually? Well, the road was long and convoluted, and indeed it may be a bit of a stretch, but that fork from which high school should I go to played some role in some way or ways, because every collection of decisions that followed eventually led me to be on the set of a reality TV show. That's the way it works. Selecting the high school I would attend was my first real consequential decision with so many clear and maybe nebulous results that would fall out of that choice. We all make choices in our younger years. Some may be as consequential. Your mileage may vary, of course. So would selecting Apollo have led me to ASU, Arizona State University, instead of Harvey Mudd, or maybe back east towards MIT if I could have been accepted there? I didn't apply, so who knows? But would the people at ASU have said, oh, you should go to Caltech or MIT? Would they even have thought to suggest Harvey Mudd? Because again, no Apollo students at Harvey Mudd College. Would I have been, or would I have pursued any ROTC program, given that I probably would not have joined the Naval JROTC program at Apollo? Would I have been thinking about Silicon Valley at all? Or would I have been thinking about the technology future of the greater Phoenix metropolitan area? And by the way, it does have more tendency to be like Silicon Valley than does Vegas, so take that for what it's worth. Would I have looked for work with my high school friends at a McDonald's in Metro Center if I was at Apollo, which I have not been, I would not have been passing twice daily, if I had attended Apollo High School? I probably would have been walking and not taking the bus, and I would not have passed by any of these businesses in that commute, in the pedestrian commute. So it would have just been a different picture for where I might have gotten some jobs while at school. Working at a fast food restaurant is something I think everybody should do at least once, and for no more than a year or so. So don't make it a career. So by the way, I do value that, but I don't think things would have gone anywhere near the same way. So it may not even have happened. I may have had more time to look at, like I did have a job installing burglar alarms and doing telephony and some other basic electronics, fire alarms, burglar alarms for this guy that I met through the Arizona Apple users group. So I was basically his apprentice for almost a year, maybe several months. So it's possible I would have tried to go in more of that direction just because I didn't so easily come across fast food restaurant opportunities. Maybe or maybe not. It's hard to say. But I think that there would have been a difference. There would have been a noticeable difference had I not been so enamored with Metro Center. Would I have been inclined towards career adventurism during the dot-com boom? Would I have been so interested in tackling the unknown, the maker mindset, participating in a reality show, moving to Vegas after a house fire, and any number of other things? Well, maybe, but I still think that the fork in the road set many things in motion that ultimately leave me here. So the paths, again, long and convoluted, but I think some early notions, early seeds were planted. But then we'll see about tomorrow. And that is the fork. Thank you for listening as always. I hope this was interesting or entertaining or educational or whatever. 1 hour. I got 1 hour and 4 minutes on my clock. It'll probably come down to under an hour when we remove the pauses, the longer pauses. I hope this has been interesting though, and we'll try to do some other thought-provoking stuff like this now and then. Some actual, because again, there are other decision forks that have been made through the years. I think I did one. There was an opportunity I had to, when I was working at True Vision, to take a job at Apple in the Newton group. Is that then? Yeah. Or work at netcom.com. So, yeah. I think I actually interviewed at Power Computing as well, but I went with the Newton group. And because of the Newton group, I ended up working at, no. Was it the Newton group? Yeah, I think it was the Newton group. Anyway, I'll put that together in a more cogent manner. But yeah, some of the decisions I've made have been equally important, but not quite as fundamentally important, if that makes sense. So like deciding to work in the Newton group and then working at SCM Microsystems and heading off to France, which I talked about in the last episode about smart cards, working at Netscape, all the people I met there and so on. So all that pathway resulted from my not working at Netcom. Netcom would have been miserable, I think. But I would have been traveling around the country. So anyway, there are all these decisions that have these outcomes, near term directly related, and then longer term indirectly related, who you meet, what you learn, what it does to your attitude. I'm never working in whatever again, and so on. So I think there's some other stuff here that we could talk about in the future, but that was the fork. And fight on, Sunny Slope Vikings. Fight on for green and white, I think it is. Fight on, Sunny Slope Vikings, to a victory tonight. That's all I remember. Take care now. Thanks for listening as always, and we'll catch you next time. Bye-bye.